Hi, everybody.
Hello. Kifu, there are three pieces of code which, if you comment them out, allows it to link. I don't understand why yet. I'm looking into it though.
It was me who introduced the regression, which break, broke the build of clan, right?
Wait, what? No, these three pieces of code were from the Xadder change. I have no idea why it has an effect, really. Doesn't seem like it should.
Etc. I don't follow. Could you paste me the SHA-1 of the change so I
Oh,
can try it out
it's
locally?
it's the three pieces of code in SeaStore.cc that
This order
call into the
CC.
OMAP code to handle Xadders. I
Ah,
emailed you the commit that reverts them,
ah.
or that just comments them out.
Thank you, thank you.
There's I They appear to be perfectly fine. I don't really understand why it's causing trouble for Clang. I'm looking into it. I expect
I think
it's like
it's
it's not exposing a symbol or something. I don't know. If
um,
nothing else, I can just leave it commented out and do what I need to do.
okay. Thank you for sharing. This is great
I just
news.
thought you might be interested since you've been looking into it.
Yes, I was scratching my head for like
Yeah,
weeks.
really quite the puzzler.
All right, everyone. So let's start. Last week I've been reading materials on garbage collection on log structured file system, and to be specific on on the implementation of F2FS, and also tried to port mclock to SeaStar, because I believe that SeaStore would also benefit from QoS to balance the to have a better control of the foreground task and background task, like the request from client and the request of like garbage collection, etc. And it's still I'm still working on it.
Wait a minute.
Regard
Where were you trying to port mclock?
where
Into C store or C star?
into I'm porting it to C star, but I think
Oh, okay.
the first I think will there are two major consumers of this C star implementation of the M clock. One is the the PG and OSD, namely Crimson, and the other part is SeaStore. I think both of them will be using mclock.
Well, I mean, same scheduler for both. So yes. I was going to point out though that some of it, I did some initial work to port our mclock implementation over to the OSD.
Yeah,
It's not much, but it's in Crimson OSD scheduler.
yeah, I saw that.
Cool. Okay.
The reason why I started looking into it is that SeaStore started to sorry, SeaStar started to complain that it's it observed some store threads, because we do start some POSIX thread
It's
right in mclock, and use we are actually using a mutex uh, POSIX mutex writing mclock, so that's why SeaStar
oh,
complains
mclock
at
itself.
seeing them. Yeah.
I see. Okay. That's a good reason to disable it for now, actually,
Mm,
and just use something simple. Or we can port it. That would be fine too. But um,
yeah, it's non-trivial, and it could
it's a
be
pretty
controversial
complicated
regarding the
implement.
yeah.
Like, I'm not sure it's worth porting just yet. If it's, I kind of forgot that it used that it did that. Did it use the
Why
one that
why
didn't
do you
use the
think it's
thread
not
though?
worth it to do so? Or
The well, maybe it is. I see. I thought the pull priority queue didn't use the thread. I guess
it's
it used.
no, it does use the threads. It's there's a
Okay,
background threading pulling the tasks at the tips of the pile.
I see. In that case, we'd want to maybe rewrite mclock to not do that. Because fundamentally, there's no reason why a scheduler should need to work like that, right?
You mean hardwire to a threading model?
Exactly. It really shouldn't need to be attached to a threading model like that.
Okay, that would be more,
That would be more work, though.
yeah, to expose this kind of machinery to the consumer of this library.
Yeah.
That part could be controversial, and I really need to talk to Eric on this to get more inputs from his side. And actually, anyway, that's me. I think the first step is to forget about the POSIX threading and to implement right with the SeaStore, and later on move over to worry about how POSIX, how we can adapt it to POSIX. That's my approach.
Yeah.
And later on we can try to push out this kind of threading model out of mclock and only worry
See,
about the
I don't see
algorithm.
anything in pull priority queue that creates a thread. I thought that was the push priority queue. Pull priority queue is just a data structure and methods for accessing thread. It doesn't actually have a thread running. I think what's going
Probably
on is that internally the accessors use pthread locks.
pull thread, that is.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's no pull thread, or there's no thread. Like the
Yeah,
accessors all get called from an external context. There's no internally maintained thread that I can find. That's the difference between pull and push.
I think it's pull. Which,
Yeah, I,
which
I use pull specifically because it doesn't create a thread. So
okay, probably I
I
could.
think it's using standard. I think it's using pthread mutexes internally to protect data structures on the assumption that different threads will be accessing it, which isn't
Yeah,
true for Crimson. So we may only just need to if-def out the mutexes.
not that simple. I think the thread keep pulling the the request from pile, and if it cannot, it will just wait for the returned time period and wake it up later on and pull it again.
Yeah,
That's
but I think
how
that's
it
what it
works.
does. I think the mclock interface itself returns the next time at which you should pull.
But it also have built-in implementation of a server, and our scheduler just use that server.
No, DQ
Okay,
calls scheduler.pull request, and if it's in the future, we use a C-star wait,
probably I
I
could
believe.
point you to
Yeah, we may have to talk
the
about it a
code.
bit.
Yeah, and and have Eric in the loop to see what he
Well,
thinks.
yeah, maybe we could talk about it at the end of the meeting.
Yeah. Anyway, I will start the discussion over in the offline in the mail thread. So we can be more specific on what we might want to change and how we could do how we should attack this problem. That's me. Chunmei.
I review some PR and I try to replace the Crimson OSD perf counter by SeaStore. Finally, that Crimson OSD coupled with the classic OSD in some files. And so in classic OSD, they use the perf counter. So I don't want to touch the classic OSD. So just keep the Crimson OSD use the perf counter. And then I added the SeaStore device for used raw disk. Another one is debugging on the SeaStore startup crash. And I found that when use we start
Can you repeat that? We lost you.
Yeah, Chunmei, could I see it again? Probably later. Greg.
Nothing today. Next week, I think.
Okay. Ronan.
Hi. Scrubbing issues. I have a few PRs that I'm testing and one that is still not fully working and not published yet. That's it.
Sam.
I'm still working on converting SeaStore to use Interruptible Future. Quite a ways to go, I think. Part of that was trying to get Clang working so that I could get better error messages on the metaprogramming I'm doing with Interruptible Future. So I've got that at least close enough working now for my purposes. That's it.
Treme, are you able to hear us?
Kufu,
Hi.
Kufu,
Could you,
can you hear me?
yes, clear and loud. We lost you
Oh,
just now. Could you say it again
oh.
regarding the start of a crash?
I found after the first startup Crimson OSD to do the makefs, and after that the OSD is shut down and start again. After the Crimson OSD start again, it seems that LBA tree root empty. So when it read the root, it cannot get anything, and so that the read extends goes to get a dirt. So I'm not sure, Sam. Maybe in the makefs we need to handle some maybe relative to some address needed to handle the relative address.
Quite possibly. I mean, there are a ton of crashes on startup right now. I haven't seen that specific one. If you want to track it down and create a patch, though, that'd be cool.
Oh yeah, I'm just trying to find if the address maybe not relatively. So I just trace the address now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll be let you know what I found later. So that's all.
Regarding the your decision on keeping using perf counter in Crimson OSD, I'd like to know which part we should be backward compatible with classic OSD.
Crimson OSD is a PG files from the classical OSD. They just compare them together. And the classical OSD PG, some PG files use the perf counter.
PG files?
So some PG files, some PG query and PG state or something. So you can see the compare CMake file. There borrow some other classical OSD files. They compare together. And that files use perf counter. So I don't want to modify the classical files. So just let it currently.
Okay, I'm looking into them. But
yeah,
are we
use the matrix,
but that part is a wide writing in the shared code in but that perf counter stuff are they shared by classical OSD and Crimson OSD? That's why we cannot switch over to
so we use some classical OSD files. They come back together, and that file use the perf counter.
Yes, they depend on or compare against perf counter, but is that the reason why we cannot switch over to metric OSD? Oh, sorry, system metric.
We need to add metrics in that classical OSD. If we want to, if we remove all the perf counter from the Crimson OSD.
I think to remove the perf counter stuff is not the goal. I think the goal is to switch over to system metrics and later on to see if we can remove them. If not, I think I'm fine. They stay with perf counters.
There's no reason you couldn't create a SeaStore metrics wrapper for it. Just use the perf counter as the location of the counter.
Yeah, that's also an approach.
I think you should do that. That's the simplest way to do it, I think. That way you don't need to implement the other perf counter stuff in Crimson. Everything would be accessed through SeaStore metric.
Anyway, Chenmei, I will send a mail so we can discuss this in more details offline.
Okay.
Fine by you.
So, pardon, Sam, what's your opinion about the perf counter and the matrix? We keep both of them?
I think that trying to if-def out the perf counters and the classic OC components would be a ridiculous amount of work. That's probably not a good idea. However, in Crimson, you can use C-star metrics to expose the perf counter state as a C-star metric. Easy, right? So I think that's what you should do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, am I understand right? So in the Crimson, in SeaStore, we can have the perf and the matrix.
I think we can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so the currently OSD used Crimson OSD, we can use perf counter, and the SeaStore we can use matrix.
Yeah,
No,
but any new code in Crimson should be using C-star metrics.
Yes, so
Just
the
shared code
SeaStore
using
is
perf
all
counters.
the SeaStore file is our own files, no classic files. So
Right.
So we can use matrix easily. But for Crimson OSD, it compared coupled with the classic OSD file.
No, it just uses them. So there's going to be
Yeah,
plenty
it
of code in Crimson.
use some of them, and that in that files there is a perf counter.
Yeah. So for those specific stats, we'll expose them by wrapping them with C-star metrics. For anything that's new in Crimson, though, there's no reason why we can't just use C-star metrics.
You just we can make a wrapper, and the classical OSD file call the perf counter some function and
No, the code that we inherited from classic OSD will just use perf counters. But from Crimson, when we want to expose them to the outside world through the admin socket, we can create a C-star metric gauge that reads the perf counter state to expose it.
The file still use the perf counter, and when we read the C-star matrix, we also read the perf counter's status.
Something like that. We can register a bunch of the C-star metrics with a given name, which is actually mirrors what we have in classical D.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And have a lambda which access the perf counter's corresponding numbers.
Right. Like, keep in mind, for any normal C-star metrics thing, you still have to create counters in a struct to actually store the literal state. So in this case, instead of creating counters in a struct, we just access the corresponding perf counters.
Yeah.
No biggie.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that's all from me.
Thank you, Chenmei. Xue
Last week I was trying to make the extend placement manager work, and right now I'm trying to implement the parallel for each function for the aerator, which will be used in extend placement manager. That's all for me.
Yeah, I don't quite follow the second part. You meant you're working on parallel for each.
Yeah, I'm trying to implement the parallel for each helper for the aerator, which will be used in the extend placement manager.
So far, we don't have the parallel for each wrapper, which can talk to an aeratorized future, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Got it. Yingxin?
Yeah, currently the Ono tree should be able to work with E again now, and the PI is merged. I tested it with vstart, and now get some CRC mismatch error after the program is supported and it start. Currently, I'm looking at the node size related issues, and I want to increase the node size in the Ono tree. That's all for me.
So in the existing implementation, the Ono size is hardwired to a given number, right?
Yes.
But do you want it to make it configurable at the runtime or
no,
at compile time?
At compile time. Make it larger at compile time.
As a template parameter?
I think the long-term goal is that when you create an object, you should be able to specify the node size. Is that the kind of thing you're working towards?
No, because we may have a hard limit.
Yeah, there might be a max limit. That's fine. We can have a hard-coded maximum limit. That's acceptable.
Yeah. I just adjust the node size according to the hard limit.
Okay, that's different though. What I'm saying is we want O nodes to be able to be smaller than that, much smaller.
You mean to make O node size flexible, so it starts with a small size.
Right. So for RBD objects, we'll be able to predict their size pretty carefully. So in that case, we'll want to be able to specify a very tight O node size that matches what we expect the real on disk size to be. But for other objects, CephFS objects, for instance, where we need to inline larger amounts of X headers, we will want to be able to allow a larger one. Things like that. I don't think it's important immediately. I just wanted to put that out there as something we want to work towards eventually.
Yeah, I think I have a reserved interfaces, so if we want to go for that, we can start with.
Yeah.
So currently I'm dealing with the hard-coded max size to increase the node size, the tree node size, not the O node size.
Yes.
And that's all.
Thank you, Yingxing. Anything else?
Just quick status update.
Sorry, Radek.
No worries.
Take on.
Okay. For the Crimson backend, I've implemented the missing inject data and mdata errors. Also extended the coverage for the unit test coverage for Aerator. Now we are verifying that the futurization works for aerated futures as well as it works for vanilla ones. Apart from that, I fixed a problem with OP-sequencer. There was assertion because there was assertion failure because of we assigned the priv op ID in some very rare cases twice during the execution of client request. And yesterday I sent a fix to extend the lifetime of op executor to match to free the object after completing the all completed sub future of DuoSD ops. That's me.
Thank you, Radek.
That's about status, but we discussed. I think we wanted to get back to the verification of tcmalloc properties and get heap property.
Rick, I don't quite follow on the tcmalloc.
Let me 1 second. Let me find the name. Okay. we wanted to differentiate the QA suite depending on variant of OSD that is being tested, and just wanted to get back to the discussion and ask what's the status. Have we chosen the solution, the approach we are going to take?
I think we are fine removing them. Greg, what do you think? At this moment, or we could move over have the fork in the Crimson test suite.
Sorry, I lost track of things a bit there.
Yeah.
And as long as we're thinking about what test coverage is, I think we're probably fine.
Sorry, I lost track of that too. Are you saying the only admin socket commands that were inappropriate was that specific set of them? I'm fine with removing it for now. It's just not critically important. It's just not a blocker, you know?
Yeah, if it's not too much trouble to like just throw them in something else that doesn't run against Crimson, or bracket it
comment
somehow.
them out, add a to-do and a bug. Trello board entry, something that we know to come back to it.
Yeah. The main thing is like those were added because there was a customer case that we needed them for, and so they need to not like break. But
you actually remember why I added those? It was me, but I don't remember why I did it.
I searched for them in my email and found a Bugzilla.
Got it. Okay.
And, it was about TC Malloc and commands, so I was paying careful attention because I care about that sort of thing, having implemented a bunch of it.
So instead of removing them, so probably we would better keeping them by commenting them out.
Hang on a sec. There's another option. It just tests that they work, right?
Yeah, like I assume that we can...
Can we fake them in Crimson? No, really.
I mean, just intercept them.
Yeah,
probably.
I like the idea.
We can, but
this is an actively good solution for now. It preserves testing in Classic, and later on we can either generalize the interface to work for whatever memory manager we have in Crimson, or we can change the test suite to bifurcate it. That's a better solution than removing the testing.
How about this? We could create a command which can only be served by Crimson OSD, and whenever we test a command which can only be served by Classic OSD, we can do this, something like this. I'm typing in the chat window. Class.
Yeah, I'm looking.
OSD command or Crimson command.
That would be fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, Crimson Classic OSD command or Crimson. I am Crimson.
Yeah.
Yes, I am Crimson.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah,
that's definitely
perfect.
Okay.
That works for me.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, cool. We do need a real solution to this, but it doesn't need to happen now.
Yeah, I still owe you guys a mail. Send it to
Well, not necessarily you.
But yeah.
But in general, one day we're going to have to. I like the driver for this. That's what I was going for. Is as soon as we have an administrative or debug or introspection interface that we need to use in tests, that's Crimson only. That's when we're going to want to fix it.
Yeah.
So that'll be the point at which to do something about it. Until then, it's not very important.
Yes. Makes sense to me.
Cool. Like, I imagine the way we dump stats in Crimson will be different. So once we want to test that, that's when we'll want to do it. Or at least the stats we dump will be different, even if the command's the same.
Actually, we do have already some Crimson specific commands, like the one which dumps the metrics. We can use that as an alternative of these commands.
Yeah, so once it becomes important to test that in topology, that's when we'll want to separate this out and add some kind of intelligence. So we'll worry about it then.
Okay. Anything else?
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this DM clock thing, if you've got a minute.
Sure.
Okay. Well, first, before I monopolize, does anyone else have no discussions? Going once? Going twice? Okie dokie. So I'm looking at pull request in dmclockserver.h, and I don't see any way for it to block. The exception is it calls super data guard, which I believe maps to some kind of mutex locker equivalent.
Yes.
But other than that, it doesn't.
Yes.
There's no extra thread here. Pull request gets called directly from the SeaStore context, and it either returns an actual thing to work on if there is one. It returns nothing if it's empty, and it returns one of these future items if there's something that will be ready to work on in the future.
Tim, could you take a look at the
run every? Sure.
Yeah. That's the one I'm messing up with.
Yeah, so this is not used for the pull queue. This is used for the push queue. This implementation has two totally separate ways of using it. One of them is used by RGW, and it does create a work queue that pulls things off of the queue and actually runs them in line in its own thread pool. But the other one is used by the OSD, the classic OSD that is, and also Crimson OSD, and it does not create its own thread pool. The OSD's own work queue calls into it and interprets the results it gets back. Crimson,
without being blocked, right?
It
waiting for it
shouldn't block, except that in classic OSD it can because it's called by many threads. It's used as a crossbar between the messenger async threads, the messenger, the async messenger's worker threads, and the OSD's worker op work queue threads. You may recall those are separate pools. So the messenger inputs things into this queue, and the OSD takes things off of the queue. So there's a mutex protecting those data structures, and that can block. In Crimson, we use the mutex because there's no if-defing it out, but it should never block.
Yeah.
Because there's only one thread accessing it. So for sure, we should be able to add an if-def here and just build it without locks, like we do a lot of other data structures. So my question is, what did you see blocking? Because I'm only aware of one thing that tends to cause SeaStore to complain, which is that when SeaStore starts up, it does a full metadata scan in just mount.
It's
not SeaStore.
Not SeaStore. I think it's more related to the scheduler, OSD scheduler.
So that shouldn't be blocking, at least not that I'm aware of.
Okay, I'll try again to see if I can reproduce this issue. But
yeah,
I do recall that it's a schedule, a DM clock scheduler.
If this is working correctly, then this data structure should be simply a data structure. It shouldn't even be starting a thread. So if it is, that's interesting. It means we have something we need to change in DM clock. But it's also possible that there's just a bug in the scheduler, and it's either not converging, or some mutex isn't being dropped correctly, or something else like that. There could be a bug in DM clock.
We should never take it. Even we have a log writing the implementation of DM clock. That very log should not be noticed by the installer detector, right?
Not unless for some reason, like the stall detector is just detecting how long it takes the task to check back in with the reactor.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not going to detect the lock. It might detect the time required to take the lock if the lock is for some reason contended.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Given
So
that it's only
in our
one
case, it should not take a long time, which should be detected by installer lock because we are single-threaded. So in that
which
case,
means the lock shouldn't be contended, so no.
Yeah.
So unless there's something else going on, or the reactor itself is doing something more complicated, or DM clock the logic, like its actual implementation, got into a degenerate state and wasted a bunch of time, walking a queue or something, I don't know. This shouldn't be happening. So it would be worth getting some kind of dump as to what it's doing. Or I could be wrong about the way DM clock works, which is possible. But as far as I understand, pull requests, or the pull queue is specifically not supposed to create any kind of threading. So that would be the thing to look at, I think. Just to make sure we understand what it's doing. If you can give me the the output, that might be good.
We'll do.
But
As
far as I understand,
trace of the printed
yeah,
by the store detector.
Does it stall permanently or just temporarily? Like, is it a permanent hang?
Temporarily.
Or does it recover?
It just complain and this warning, then it goes away.
So the other thing is that if the scheduler isn't interesting, if the scheduler constantly has work to do and it's not otherwise blocking, it might not ever return to the reactor. We might have to introduce a yield. Do you see what I mean?
Like yield the reactor to the caller.
Yeah, that so if you can't imagine every task that comes.
Is the scheduler implemented as a SeaStore thread?
No.
So we don't need to yield. If it's blocked, it's just yield.
Right, but I'm saying if it never blocks, then it might not ever return to the reactor.
Never blocks. Okay.
Like if there's always work to do, but it never has I/O to do because everything's in cache or whatever, or because BlueStore is running so fast that it's always available immediately. Anyway, that's what I would look at. I would look at basically. I would try to first figure out what it's doing.
Yeah.
That should be illuminating.
To produce, and I will share you with the factories and see what's going on there.
Cool.
But anything else? Nope. Okay. Talk later. Have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you. See you later.
Later. See you.